Let me make one thing clear right now at the beginning of the video. It doesn't matter how much experience you have, what kind of lenses or cameras you own, be it a Sony, a Fuji, a Nikon, a Canon, a Panasonic, a GoPro, or possibly even a Blackmagic. The most important thing, in my opinion, if you are going after this special cinematic look, is adjusting the exposure of your camera. Yeah, all of this for just one stupid camera? To actually do this, you go into your camera settings, to your video recording setup, and switch everything that has to do with exposure to manual. Manual? This gives you the possibility to actually control the shutter, the ISO and the aperture. And then, based on these three settings, you can mold your picture exactly the way you want it to be. With other words, yes, I know you have to take care of a lot when you use your camera in manual settings, but you can actually trust me on this. It is so much better to take that extra few tweaks instead of having your shots being under or overexposed afterwards and everything that you have done is ruined and looks like an amateur. Learn your camera from the inside out and switch it into manual exposure while recording. The second most important thing is frame rates and of course what kind of scene you are shooting. Let's say you just want to film a scene like this here, the exact scene. You talking into the camera, then you record this in 25 frames per second, 24 if you are from the US, and everything will look normal and fluid. But here is the same scene again with the same settings, only that I have now recorded it in 60 frames per second, and I'm swinging my arms around that you can see actually what I'm talking about. Looks strange somehow, don't you think? What I'm trying to say is you shouldn't record everything at slow-mo FPS, but rather plan in advance what kind of shoot or scene you are actually recording and try to adapt your shooting style exactly to that. However, if you want to shoot in slow-mo, then you increase your FPS number, in my case to 60 frames per second in 4K or 120 frames per second in 1080p, depending on how slow I want my shots to be. Increasing the frame rate ensures that if you later bring the footage into your editing program and slow it down, the image will still play smoothly and will not start to jerk around, such as if you slow down 25 frames per second material by half. As an example, YouTube stuff, or my YouTube stuff in that case, is always recorded in either 25 or 60 frames per second. But if I have a shoot for a customer, then I usually record everything directly in 60 or 120 frames per second in order to emotionally exhaust every little thing that happens. A look at 25 frames per second is just a look, but at 120 frames per second, it can be a statement. Equally important and not to be despised in any case is the so-called doubling of frames, or in German, die 180-Grad-Regel. This affects the motion blur in your footage. The general rule is, no matter what you set as an FPS number, double your shutter speed. This creates very natural motion blur in your picture, the way you know it from films or from cinema. Of course, rules are meant to be broken to evoke different moods, but first you must actually learn the rule to be able to break it effectively. Let's say you shoot in 25 frames per second. You set your shutter speed to 1/5 of a second. If you shoot in 60 frames per second, you set it accordingly to 1/120th of a second. With cinema cameras and cameras that are specifically designed for filming, like the Pocket 4K, you can decide whether you want to set it manually and, hence the German name of the rule, simply dial in the number of degrees you would like, or actually go with the degrees themselves. The normal setting for that is 180 degrees, which then, and that is really cool, automatically sets everything to the correct settings every time you change your frame rate. I actually know how tempting it can be to just leave your camera in autofocus mode all day, because then you don't have to worry about anything while shooting. But you actually have to learn from day one how to focus manually. The only way you are able to get those really crispy shots and these great shifts in sharpness while you are in motion is manual focusing. Of course, as always, it depends on whether you do it in a controlled environment like your own YouTube studio, or for example at an event somewhere where everything is hectic and uncontrolled and you don't have time to actually give people directions, but rather just document what they are doing. This requires more planning as a whole, but in the end, everything you have recorded that day has been done by you and not by your camera. In order to make things a little bit easier, there is actually a setting called focus peaking in almost all the cameras, which usually produces such strange red flicker thingies on your screen. This, contrary to what I thought when I first shot with this setting, is not a mistake, but rather one of the most helpful tools ever, and can actually help you to determine exactly which part of your picture is currently in focus and which is not. Everything that is displayed in red is in focus, everything else is completely out of focus. You can determine through your aperture how large the area is that will be in focus. And now to something that not all cameras have, but which contributes a significant part to the overall cinematic look you are looking for: recording in a flat profile. Most of the cameras that have been released to the market within the last 3 years or so all have a more or less identical profile with log in their description, be it S-Log at Sony's or C-Log at Canon. This flat color profile not only ensures that you think in the beginning of your recording that everything somehow looks like shit, and you have absolutely no idea what exactly you just recorded there. But as soon as you understand that log formats are just a basic container which have all the relevant information stored for you and they are actually just waiting to be opened and explored, you not only get more details in the depths and the heights, but also more possibilities in the end to play with the colors without introducing a lot of noise or artifacts into the picture. I have put my Sony settings for S-Log2 in the description below. You can simply put them in your camera yourself. You're absolutely welcome to try it out. So, once you have digested all of this and you are familiar with exposure, the high frame rates, depending on the current scene you are shooting, how you best focus onto something manually and in which format you shoot the whole thing, then it doesn't matter which camera you actually have. Your picture will look really cinematic every single time. I hope I was able to help you a little bit with understanding the fundamentals and that the video itself made you a little bit more familiar with your own camera. If it helped, then I would be happy to receive a thumbs up as well as a click on the subscribe button below. And as always, if you have any more questions, please drop them down in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. I'm looking forward to seeing any or all of you in the next video. My name was Leech, and as always, yeah, goodbye.